Berlin's ruined royal palace, the Schloss, came in the firing line. Its remains stood in East Berlin, and the communist authorities there decided that with its imperial past, it represented the wrong kind of history. In 1950, it was demolished.
Die erste Sprengung war unser Professor Weithas. Der hat uns wie ein Verrückter, der sonst ein sehr ruhiger und netter Mensch war, hat er uns weggescheucht vom Fenster. Wir mussten verschwinden. Wir durften uns das nicht ansehen. Es war einfach traurig, nicht, dass alles so runterging.
It was an ignominious end for what was, after all, Berlin's most historic building. And where the Schloss stood, today there's a vast sandy pit, once more an empty space at the heart of the city, waiting for answers. For a decade after the demolition of the Schloss, East and West Berlin became more and more divided. One Sunday in 1961, the East Berlin authorities began work on a structure that was to define the lives of all Berliners for nearly 3 decades. That day came to be known as Stacheldraht-Sonntag, or Barbed Wire Sunday. The barbed wire would quickly be replaced by reinforced concrete. Arc lamps and guard towers watched over the notorious death strip. An exposed no-go area of bare sand that cut a huge swathe through the city. When the wall was built, it instantly became the most infamous and emotionally charged structure, not just in Berlin, but in the whole world. The people of the city had seen many grotesque things in the 20th century, but this was new. Ruthlessly, the wall cut everything in its path in half. Entire communities, neighborhoods, families, even the dead weren't sacred enough. The buildings of Berlin used to fit in with the Schloss. Now they responded to the wall. Once more, East and West competed, this time for height. Right-wing press baron Axel Springer taunted the East Berlin authorities by commissioning a new headquarters in West Berlin right next to the wall.
Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit.
The communist response? 4 new apartment blocks that put Springer's building in the shadow. But even these were dwarfed by another project in the east, the Fernsehturm, or TV tower. Constructed in 1969 at over 360 meters tall, it quickly became a Berlin icon, visible right across the city, east or west. For the communists, it was a symbol of newness, of technology, of the future, proudly flaunted in the face of the West. But how could the communists replace this? It was now 20 years since the demolition of the Schloss, Berlin's royal residence. In 1973, construction finally began on a replacement. On the very spot where the Schloss had stood rose another palace, the Palace of the Republic. It was the seat of the East German Parliament, but it was also meant to be an open house for the people, and they made the most of it. Despite sneers from the West, it didn't take long for it to wedge in the hearts of East Berliners.
Ja, ich habe schöne Konzerte gehört, ich habe schöne Familienfeiern erlebt. Das war öfter und das war sehr schön. Ich habe das Haus als wichtig für unsere Stadt gesehen. Es war ein neuer Mittelpunkt. Ich bin keine Architektin, kein Fachmann.
Aber als Bürgerin.
Fachfrau. Aber als Bürgerin dieser Stadt fand ich den Palast schön.
Those who mourned the Schloss, though, looked rather less kindly on the building that had replaced it.
Das war schon Raub, das war kein Diebstahl mehr. Ne? Das war ein Raub. Ne?
When the Berlin Wall finally fell in 1989, the Palace of the Republic, a symbol of the communist East, was never likely to survive in a reunified city. In 2006, demolition began. Asbestos, said the government. Wrong history claimed aggrieved East Berliners. Either way, the site became vacant once again. And a question hung over the empty space. What should be built here? A building that acknowledged the past, or one that embraced the future? Now, remarkably, plans are in place to rebuild the old royal palace, the Schloss, in the very same spot where it once stood. Wichtig ist es für Sie, dass das Schloss neu gebaut wird jetzt, Herr Wolf.
Was ich davon halte?
Ja.
Ich finde es großartig.
Und was glauben Sie?
Ich finde es völlig unsinnig, das neu zu bauen.
Unsinnig und großartig. Und wieso?
Weil das Schloss keine so positive, große historische Bedeutung hat, dass man da unbedingt viel Geld reinstecken muss.
Und was glauben Sie, Herr Wolf?
Das kann ich überhaupt nicht verstehen. Also, dass Sie als ältere Dame eine solche Meinung haben, ist es städtebaulich wichtig, dass hier wieder das Schloss hinkommt und nichts anderes.
Was sagen Sie jetzt dazu?
Auf diesem Platz, wo das Schloss mal stand, stand doch etwas. Warum hat man das abgerissen? Warum hat man das nicht gelassen?
Und sehen Sie Ihre Meinung?
Das, was Sie meinen, der Palast der Republik, ich habe nichts gegen den gehabt. Der ist, sage ich immer noch, völlig deplatziert, sowohl in städtebaulicher Hinsicht, nicht wahr? Er gehört da nicht hin.
Für Sie war die Demolierung des Schlosses die Verschüttung der Vergangenheit und für Sie war die Demolierung des Palastes der Republik die Verschüttung der Vergangenheit. Also haben Sie beide recht. For as long as arguments like these continue, Berlin will remain restless. And this is what makes it unique. A new city, still coming to terms with its past. Next week, from Schinkel through modernism to Speer, the making of modern Berlin.
Hat uns weggescheucht da vom Fenster. Wir mussten verschwinden. Wir durften uns das nicht ansehen. Es war einfach traurig, nicht? Dass alles so runterging.
Berlin's ruined royal palace, the Schloss, came in the firing line. Its remains stood in East Berlin, and the communist authorities there decided that with its imperial past, it represented the wrong kind of history. In 1950, it was demolished, waiting for answers. For a decade after the demolition of the Schloss, East and West Berlin became more and more divided. One Sunday in 1961, the East Berlin
Die erste Sprengung war, unser Professor Weithas, der hat uns wie ein Verrückter, der sonst ein sehr ruhiger und netter Mensch war.
It was an ignominious end for what was, after all, Berlin's most historic building. And where the Schloss stood, today there's a vast sandy pit. Once more, an empty space at the heart of the city